new ship designs, the freaking rainforest and a dome. I'm like, this is what I wanted.
There were, say that it was a bit underwhelming for the 33rd.
Yeah. And by the way, hi everybody, we're live now. But
that's where they maybe their chief.
I know a lot of the ship nerds, you know, in the fandom were really pleased with that, especially like when they first get to Starfleet headquarters in season 3. And there's sort of taking the tour of the fleet, and you see all the ships, you know, like a lot of people. And I think one of them was the Voyager J, I think.
Voyager J.
And it was fun going on Twitter like that day and seeing all the ship nerds in the fandom, like just completely
just the setup,
losing their minds.
Just the setup, finding out what happens
season 3 of Discovery.
Just finding out what happens that far down the line, the Federation splintering into almost nothing, you know, all these tragedies across the galaxy, seeing how Vulcans and Romulans are like coming back together, all that stuff is fascinating me. I'm like, yes, this is what I wanted to see out of more Star Trek.
I gotta go in here and say because I have thoughts on this subject. First of all, for me, like seeing the future was kind of amazing, but then if I was like a guy making Star Trek, I wouldn't say it was like 32nd century or whatever it was. I would probably put that technological level on the like 26th or 27th at most. Because, I mean, in my head canon, 1,000 years into the future was always like ships being these amorphous blobs and everybody traveling throughout the observable universe instantaneously, and basically having this amazing technological levels because all the technologies we see in the 32nd, we have basically already seen it all before, like in the 24th, just in its like infant stage. And it usually doesn't take like 5,000 years to develop it further.
Yeah, you have to keep in mind, the other thing to keep in mind.
They found Arrakis and started holding space.
The spice must flow.
The other thing you got to keep in mind is that technology tends to feed on itself, and it's not a linear curve. It tends to be much more exponential.
Yeah,
I mean, we talk about the developments in the last 100 years. Are greater than practically all history before that. That's a pattern which may eventually plateau out, but I don't think anytime soon.
Yeah. Here's one thing to remember, though, when it comes to military technology. It's kind of funny. On the one hand, the development is cutting edge, but what you put in a ship, like you say, current naval warship, for instance, they're not looking for bleeding edge. They're looking for reliability.
True.
Exactly.
So they're proven technology. So actually, what the military is using in large scale at any given time is actually already disseminated into the public and become common. So I remember when in the late 80s, early 90s, whenever it was, when they were upgrading the processors in the on the space shuttles, that they were going up to a 486, and that was like 486 have been out for like 8 years, but they had just finally proven themselves to be reliable enough that they could dare to put them in a space in any of the space shuttles. So and that's why, again, like in my industry in automation and controls, there's bleeding edge stuff work being done out there, but most people, what they need is reliability. They don't and robustness. They don't need like the bleeding edge. So you don't see a lot of the bleeding edge stuff out there, which is why, like I'm like when we comes to like self-driving cars and stuff, like we're so far away from having large fleets of self-driving vehicles. People have no clue.
I mean, militaries around the world is pretty deep into using drones. And those are pretty bleeding edge. And then they're for the 35.
Not really.
No, drones have been out for a while. Even,
I think the Nazis
for like
used
$20.
drones at one time.
Keep in mind. Please also keep in mind that they did try to make a much more futuristic and sleek version of the Enterprise J, shown like back in Discovery. And people complained that it looked dumb. So
that's true. Well, that's the other thing is that, I mean, especially when you're doing a TV series, like, I mean, that is, you're meaning for it to be palatable to a popular audience, and this is, I make this point almost every time we talk about this. You have to sort of balance the different factors where, I think they wanted to jump Discovery 1,000 years ahead because they figured that would be far enough that could justify more or less writing whatever status quo they wanted.
Also, just to finish what I was saying,
go ahead.
It's not even just that. Like, these same people who complained that the Enterprise J looked dumb, I think it's a pretty cool design. They're the same people complaining now, like, oh, what the heck? All these like 700-year younger ships, they should be able to blast the Discovery apart with one shot. How is it still in one piece? Like,
well, there seem to be some people who just, that's how they get their clicks and their views, is just by complaining. So like that's their shtick. It doesn't matter what it's going to be. They look for something to complain about because that's what their viewers and their audience wants to see.
I really like the designs, but what I actually thought would have been really cool if they had like implemented stuff from cultures that were, highly advanced in like enemy stuff, like you could see signs of like they clearly integrated some Borg technology or like they were using biotechnology from the species something. I forget what the number was, but
Isaiah, you had something to say.
Yeah, I've always, for me, liked the Enterprise D. I don't know. I always just like that design.
I love the bridge. It's my favorite bridge design. It looks so cozy.
I actually have the Enterprise D, the 1992 Playmates.
Nice.
So,
damn. There you go.
That still works, by the way.
Whoa.
Nice.
Come on.
Yeah, I agree with Joe's point about incorporating other empires' technologies, because if you think about like the Romans, part of the reason why the Romans were successful is that they adopted technology from other people and then made it their own. Like the Spada came basically from the Iberian Peninsula, the shields came from somewhere else. I mean, basically they didn't invent a lot of their technology, but they adapted it from everywhere. And
Romans also invented cultural appropriation.
they stole it from the Greeks,
and we're still benefiting from it today.
Well, that's right.
The Borg, they assimilated all these things.
One other point I will make, the one thing that you're talking about being picky. Here's one of my little picky things that it's totally stupid, but I'm going to say it anyway. That like one thing that I got annoyed by is this tradition on the Star Trek series now of just keep adding a letter to the successive ship, which is like something that it was kind of cool in Star Trek, at the end of Star Trek 3,
with the Enterprise,
you get the Enterprise A, and then fine, they did it with the next gen, but then they kept doing it, and now it's like, okay, it wasn't just the Enterprise, now it's like a whole bunch of other ships with like the alphabet, and like no, navies don't do that. They don't.
Because the Enterprise was.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I'm just imagining the day, like a couple thousand years from now, when they finally create the Enterprise Z or Z, whatever they call it, and then like, hey, we just started drawing up plans for the next Enterprise. Like, oh wait, what do we call it?
But you saw that like with the Mac OS. I mean, you went all the way up to like 7.2, 7.5, and then they came out with not OS 10 but OS X.
Right.
And it was like, are we going to Roman numerals? And then it's just like, I don't know. Let's start with cats.
The Enterprise
Tiger and Jaguar, and then we'll go with landscape features. It's just, I don't know. What are we doing next? Let's do something different.
Or like Microsoft. Windows 10. That's the last one. We're just going to keep iterating with, and then like, we're going to go to 11.
We'll do another one.
But also remember Xbox 360, and then Xbox One. So it's kind of
it's like but that comes after.
You don't care. We're going to do what I want. Screw you guys.
It was an Xbox retcon.
Gone around
letters and
good. Good point, Julian.
Reboot. Everybody's going to love that one, right?
Yeah. Xbox One may sound a little misleading, but I think by far the worst name for a console ever was the Wii U. Because so many people didn't understand. They thought it was just a slightly revised Wii, and they expected all the same like Wii U games to play on their old Wii. And right around the time they released the Wii U, they also released the Wii Mini, which was like a slightly stripped down Wii that had like half the memory, like 100 games already on it or whatever. And you can bet so many confused parents and grandparents got that for their kids that Christmas, and those kids were devastated because they wanted the Wii U.
Well, also Wii Mini sounds redundant.
Yeah, really. It's like really small, you all. It's
they
like,
should have called it the Wii.
It's like that bit that
that would be a marketing disaster.
It reminds me of that bit that I think Fred Armisen used to do it on Saturday Night Live as Steve Jobs, where he just kept introducing smaller and smaller iPods, and the smaller they got, the more songs they held. So it was like the iPod Micro. It holds 11 billion songs. You know?
What about the?
We are here to the point when a freaking micro SD can hold a terabyte. So whatever.
The iPod Atomic.
No, the iPod Atomic,
It holds all songs from the entire universe.
Yeah, every song ever made.
iPod Quark.
The iPod Plank.
The iPod Plank has every song ever made or ever will be made.
It's the smallest it could ever possibly be, and it has every song that will ever be made.
I have a marketing campaign.
The iPod
just sort of going around and they're walking around in their neighborhood, and the tagline is "Walk the plank."
Hire that woman, Apple.
Vast.
You can imagine the iPod Plank having like a quantum drive where you just have all possible strings of bits, so it just has every possible song.
Yeah, exactly. Vovacat, you wanted to say something.
Actually, well, for Dana's pun, I wish that there was a hug react, because that was
it's beautiful. All right, Vovacat, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I wanted to say about things getting smaller and information getting bigger. I've just recently walked around and saw on sale this micro SD card, which was 1 terabyte. And I know it's not yesterday's news, but for me, it was like a blow my mind moment. Because I remember, I was a kid back then, 2008, when there were those micro SD cards, and I was like, how are they so small? How can they hold any information while being so small? And they were like a gigabyte or 2 gigabytes already by that point. And now I see a terabyte one, and it's ridiculously expensive, and it's unreasonable. But still, the whole idea of having a terabyte of information on this tiny thing, it's a bit unsettling.
Well, if you want to understand how unsettling it really is, B-52, and remember when the first time you got a CD and you said, why don't they put this on a chip? And they're like, well, because that chip would be the size of your desk. And now, that's like the barest fraction of what you can put on that little micro thing, you know?
I tell you, sometimes I feel bad for whoever invented the zip drive. Anybody remember zip drives?
I still have some.
That were they were cutting edge for like a week. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh no, there's a USB drive. You can put it on your keys and it holds just as much as a zip disk and even more. And it's like, so the guy who invented the zip drive had like a really good, week. And he was like, yeah, this is awesome. And they were around for a little bit longer than that. But it seems like it was like, oh boy, this technology got surpassed real fast.
Did micro CDs come out at about the same time too?
Well, even CDs came out in the early 80s.
No, I mean the micro
CDs. Micro discs.
Maybe, but see, here the funny part is even more short-lived. They came out with an optical floppy drive, and then it was like 21 megabytes, and then the zip drive came out like 6 months later with 100 megabytes, and then like you said, a few years later, then the first USB key was like 21 meg, and then very rapidly just blew all that stuff away.
Do you remember backing up to tapes at all?
All the time.
I am aware of it. I never actually did it back in the day, but I'm aware of. I've actually used it since, because when I laugh about people's fears about automation, because I still encounter tapes today, because there's places that have shit that's so old that they still have tape backups of stuff, and it's like, and I had to scramble to get a drive that could read the disc that they had, the tape that they had.
Yeah,
I feel unreasonably young next to you all right now.
We had to set our at the newspaper. We had to set our data to back up overnight, because we backed up the tape, and it took
all night,
so 4 hours. And so
Lauren, you had your hand up.
Yeah, well, just to give you a little perspective, I don't know how much the UNIVAC 1108 had in terms of memory when I was feeding punch cards into it back in 1968. I can remember one of the first computers that I worked directly with was Digital Equipment Corporation PDP-8. It had 32 kilobits of magnetic core memory. Now, this was a type of memory where the only way you could read it was to scan it and either reinforce its 1 or 0 state or switch its 1 or 0 state. And this is one of those memories where you didn't want to put a whole lot of electrical transients into it because you could scramble it. And if it was scrambled, you know how you reloaded it? Paper tape.
Oh, Lauren, I just looked up what you were working on. It had 2 memory arrays. One was 32K, the other was 64K, but they were 38-bit words.
30. Boy, now that's interesting because the PDP-8s that I worked with were 12-bit.
Yeah,
they weren't 8-bit, they weren't 16-bit, they were 12-bit, and it was just simple enough that I actually got into doing machine language programming on that, and that was about 10 tons of fun.
Yeah, I never got the PDP-8, but I did do quite a lot on PDP-11s.
Oh yeah, I when I moved to Keithley Instruments. Well, actually, before I moved to Keithley Instruments, we were doing machine programming on PDP 1123s with a pair of RLO2s. You remember the RLO2s, the 10 megabyte disk drives? Yep. And speaking of backing up, we had spare RLO2 disks that we would use. I've forgotten the name of the backup utility, but once a week I was backing up, the main drive and the data drive. And that wasn't too bad. That's usually like half an hour to do a drive.
Well, that's why I don't understand. Like, it's one thing to there's old games and stuff I'm nostalgic for, but I'm not nostalgic for those old systems really because they sucked and everything was slow and hard to do. So it's like, I think it was Tool Time did a video about that, about people that are overly nostalgic about old shitty technology. And it's like
it wasn't that good.
I'll tell you what. I mean, the 1123 wasn't bad, but the 23 plus was a pretty good improvement on that. But then it really got to be so that the processors were really starting to pick up speed, and then but the real bombshell was the Microvax 2.
Yeah,
because when that showed up and the speed just went, through the ionosphere. And I'll never forget, we had one of our systems that was originally based around 1123 plus. And at one point or another, because of availability, whatever have you, we developed a migration to a Microvax 2 or one of the subsequent Microvaxes. And the speed just went from, sort of walking pace to Usain Bolt.
Well, yeah, the same thing happened when I was working at IFF. We had this old Modcom Classic 4, and it literally took like 20 minutes to compile and 30 minutes to link a program. And if you made a mistake, then you had to go back and all this. And then we got a Microvax. It was Microvax 4. And it now became seconds. See, that's the thing. I'm nostalgic for the fact that because stuff sucked, that you had to be very creative to work around the suckiness. But I'm really glad I don't have to do that anymore.
Right.
I'm really glad I don't have to do that
One last thing I'd like to throw in on this. I mentioned the new computer I've got. I had an HP ProBook 4540S, which I thought was pretty good. This puppy dog has a solid state drive in it. And we're back. I mean, the HP would take somewhere in the vicinity of, a minute to 90 seconds to fully boot up. I can boot this thing, walk out, walk back in, it's booted. It's ready to take my login. It is, if you haven't experienced a solid state drive, fasten your seatbelt because they are faster than the proverbial scalded cat.
Oh yeah, my laptop has one, and it's so nice.
It's
right
like now
3 seconds from off to completely load it up.
Oh my god, I'm doing that again.
No, go ahead.
Good.
I mean, I'm like for several months now, I'm sitting on an NVMe solid state drive actually on my main system, and it's freaky. After everything I've done, after having my system on the hard drive for a long time, after having my system on a regular solid state drive, the SATA ones, the old ones. This is crazy. It really, like you say, it boots up in less than a minute, and I can say that's true.
It's orders of magnitude faster, isn't it?
Orders
I remember
of magnitude, because it's a different system.
I remember when I was a teenager, and I think it was the first computer I had that actually ran Windows, and it was like Windows 3.1, you know. And,
I remember that one.
Yeah, and
remember it well.
And there was something, I forget, there's something happened to it that I had to take it to get repaired, and I took it to our local computer repair guy, who was like a wizard. You know what I mean? He might as well have been like a magician, and he fixed whatever the issue was, and then he also he changed the memory settings so that it was a lot quicker, like programs would load a lot faster, and you know, it was like he had just worked a miracle to me. And he did it, and then he showed me how quick like my word processor program loaded, and like it loaded really fast, like faster than I was used to, and then he just kind of looked at me expectantly, like, I will receive your applause now. You know, and it was like, okay, good job, you know.
Yeah, so, Steve, I remember those days, but that was back in the day when there was a whole lot of confusion about how the memory in a PC was organized.
Yeah,
and there, you expanded memory and extended memory, and it was just it was madness.
And you needed a memory, and you needed a memory manager. But see, here's the funny thing: where things have come full circle for me, because I remember when I was working at IFF, and when I was dealing with that slow computer I was complaining about earlier, and I remember my boss, who was about my age that I am now, and he was like, he had no sympathy for me, because he had done with punch cards, and where you would print out your punch cards, and then you would submit them to the computer room and come back like a few days later, and then only to find out that there was an error and you had to go back and do the whole thing over again. And so now now that I'm at this age, and then I hear people complain about the slowness of modern technology, and I'm like, you know, I want to pat them on the head and be like,
you have no idea.
You ain't seen nothing. Julian, you had your hand up.
Yeah, no, it's funny. I was circling back to what we were saying earlier about we were linking this with what we were saying about the timelines for tech advance, right? You got, you know, in Star Trek, they're positing that, you know, in 200 years from now, we're going to have faster than light travel and teleportation, which seems like, you know, kind of wildly off the trajectory we're on. But as I just looked this up, that, you know, data, you know, is introduced as having something like 100 petabytes of like storage space, which is still a lot, but, you know, like a laptop comes with a terabyte. So like 1,000 of those. It's like, really, like that doesn't actually seem like it would be a lot in 200 years. That seems like that would be, you know, what's on your iPod.
Or to run, you know,
data. I was gonna say, that
Well,
seems like a small amount of information to run a sentient program.
Oh, yeah. Well, think about this. I got a Note 20, but my previous one was a Note 4, because I take a long time between phones. Anyway, when I had the Note 4, I actually looked up the specs and I compared them to the Cray 2 computer. For anyone who doesn't know, the Cray 2 was a a multi-processor, you know, quote unquote supercomputer. That one of the things it did is there was one that was, or a couple of them, a pair of them that was running NORAD. So this is strategic air defense and the nuclear defense of the entire nation, and all, you know, all that, and that was being run on this. And my Note 4 had 4 times the capacity as far as, you know, processor speed and operations per second than what we ran all of our air, you know, nuclear and air defense for the entire nation on back, you know.
You don't actually need a very powerful computer to run a defense program. It's probably not even that complicated in its smaller details. And that's actually the same thing about the Apollo guidance computer. It's like a well-known fact that basically any normal smartphone today has more processing power, way more processing power than the Apollo guidance computer.
Most calculators do.
But what people tend to forget is that orbital mechanics is 3 equations. And like the rocket propellant equations are like also not many of them. It's hard to calculate on paper because it involves some unpleasant mathematics. But computers, they don't actually have a hard time doing it.
No, but the thing is,
redundant though. I mean, unpleasant mathematics.
Yeah. Well, see, one thing, you know, trying to kind of swing it back towards Star Trek, is that if you remember, when Enterprise first started, you know, there were people that complained that the ship didn't look advanced enough.
Yeah.
But because, and like again, I get back to the whole reliability thing. It's like, No, like they wanted systems that they could, they're not going to be near repair facilities, so they need something that they could fix out in the field. But
Volkswagen.
No, but the real reason was because they needed funding for it, so they made it in a retro style, and people were like, we're like, oh yeah, I like that.
Well, also too, remember is that they have the canon of the original series, so they couldn't make something that looked more advanced than the original series, even though the original series would look archaic to us today.
I mean, you're talking about an X01, right?
Yeah.
Again, it's an opinion I have already expressed, but I think that that ship actually looks perfect for what they were trying to convey. Because again, I said that already, but that's the reason why I love Stargate, and that's the reason why I love Star Trek Enterprise. It's because that same old reliable technology, and in the Stargate's case, of course, the military would build their first starship like an aircraft carrier or a submarine. Of course they would. That's what they know how to do.
But before I forget, okay, so just two things. One, the more I've been watching all the episodes of Star Trek: The Next Generation, like an episode every day, and I'm really enjoying it. Just getting caught up. And
Code of Honor was a tough one to sit through, but go ahead.
The more I see of Data, the more I relate to him. One of my favorite moments recently was when it's like a day in the life of Data, where he
Data's
everything down. And he's like, oh, if it's a good thing that I don't feel these emotions, otherwise I would be nervous. Oh, while he's nervously tapping his finger without realizing it. It's like you're starting to see the point where he's not just emulating how he sees humans acting. He actually is experiencing it.
Yeah, Brent Spiner is just such a freaking brilliant actor to begin with. Anyway,
and he has
his smile.
His smile. I was just going to say that. That's one of the.
I laughed my ass off.
I feel like that's something. That's one of my favorite Data moments, and not just in that episode, but in the whole show when he does that creepy Joker smile when he's dancing with the hologram. And I don't know, but I think that might be something that like Brent Spiner just did. And they let him do it because it's so funny and it's so weird and creepy and it's absolutely perfect. It's one of my favorite days.
Because I mean, that's what kids do.
Yeah.
Like, if you look at like 3- and 4-year-olds, they know they're supposed to smile in photographs.
Yeah.
And it's terrible.
Yeah.
It's awful. They have this grin.
Yeah. Exactly.
Show my teeth.
I've also been catching up with some of DS9, and I've actually been watching it a little randomly.
Yeah,
it's like I'll see an episode from season 1, then I'll see one from season 7, and then season 2, and it just
well, this shit changes a lot.
Yeah, so one of my
how could you watch DS9 like that?
Seeing one of the later episodes where Ram becomes the Grand Negus.
Yeah,
and
right. That's right
near the
end. Yeah.
And you see that Ferenginar is becoming more progressive. It's kind of catching up to us, basically.
Yeah.
They're changing their values, and Quark is he's a purist. He wants to stick to the old ways. He pretty much says he's going to make Ferenginar great again. And one thing we don't see in Discovery that I would like to see if they continue in that future story is what are the Ferengi doing? Has there been a Ferengi civil war since that time? As you have like the Quark's ilk and then Ram's type.
I mean, my favorite idea for that would be actually like I know it's not in a good Star Trek way, but if they could actually have a civil war and then basically split, basically the thing that happened to Vulcans and Romulans. Yeah. So basically, like one group of them leaves, and maybe they go somewhere far away and keep their traditional ways, and then basically like the heroes encounter them and they're like, wow, those are just like the old Ferengi, but the modern day Ferengi are nothing like that.
I wonder, I mean, I feel like I all I know about the upcoming season of Discovery is what they show in the trailer, but apparently the ongoing sort of story arc of season 4 of Discovery is going to have something to do with the response to a natural disaster that has affected the whole galaxy or something. And
of course.
And but
stories.
Yeah, I know, right? I'm really hoping that Strange New Worlds actually does kind of break that trend and that they do stick to what they've promised that they're going to do more single episode stories with Strange New Worlds, and I really hope that they do. But yeah, so the larger story arc of Discovery season 4 is supposedly something to do with some terrible natural disaster. And if they want, and I don't know what the plan is, but if they wanted to drop in on the Ferengi, that would be the perfect opportunity, because, you know, you could still have them be sort of a super duper capitalist society that is just, you know, they're so focused on profit and making money that they're completely unprepared to respond to this natural disaster that is affecting everybody.
But they were showing signs of getting better centuries ago. I mean, maybe they could regress, but
yeah, maybe like, maybe they're falling back into the old ways because of it or something.
Steve, I like that idea of having the society split, but and it actually makes me think of I started watching Falling Skies. I watched it when it was first run, but I started watching it, then I missed a whole bunch of episodes for a variety of reasons, and then I tried to pick it up to a season or two later, and it was incomprehensible. Yeah. But what was, I remember at the time, I think one of the things that actually turned me off to the show, and probably why I stopped watching it initially, was that here, for anyone who doesn't know, is some alien species has come and invaded Earth. They've killed like 90% of the population, and now you've got the people that are left fighting for survival, right? So, but you end up finding in the show there's treachery among humans against one another. And at the time, I remember thinking, this is ridiculous. You know, if we were faced with this horrible external thing that's wiping us out, that for sure we would put aside our bullshit and come together, a la, Independence Day. But now, and I'm watching it, and I'm like, oh yeah, no, this is totally believable.
Totally. I saw someone
there as like whether or not it's external, and I think that matters.
Before I was just trying to say, how surreal would it be if, when we revisit the Ferengi, if there was a faction of them that was going to other planets affected by this disaster and providing aid, just generously giving things
I was
away.
going to make the same suggestion. Now, what do you do with an altruistic Ferengi?
Because I'll be frank. I mean, look, when it comes to like real people and real cultures, there's kind of this attitude that, oh, well, you have to respect everything about everybody's culture. Like, no, you don't. Every culture has parts of it that suck. And I look at the Ferengi culture, and there are so many times in DS9 where Brunt or some other character just shows the worst sides of it and like admonishes Quark for straying from the Ferengi faith. And I just want to go in his nose and say, your culture fucking sucks.
Your culture sucks, dude. Isaiah, you had your hand up.
Well, I was going to add, like, what if the Ferengi try to make a profit on disaster? Because they can do that too.
They would. They totally would.
They absolutely would.
They would be the Ferengi would be the ones that are like selling water to people.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Yeah.
Well, Steve, you started to say something before after I spoke. What were you going to say then?
What was I going to say then?
I was about Falling Skies and how it was totally believable to me now.
Oh, yes.
There
was a thing. I saw a thing on Twitter just a couple days ago where somebody referenced, talking about the idea of some kind of external threat uniting humanity together, and we put all of our differences aside. By the way. Yeah. But someone referenced Ozymandias in Watchmen, and they said, Ozymandias' big plan was to fake an alien invasion to bring humanity together. What an optimist. It's like that wouldn't work.
Oh yeah. Well, in the stream last night, somebody brought up the person posited when will some government or governments basically effectively do that, like basically tell us that there's aliens coming to try to bring us together. I'm like, no, that would be a stupendously bad idea, because we have all the evidence now that we would in fact cut each other down. And,
we would choose sides. We would be probably even more tribal than we are now.
I mean, have we ever had this story in any book or in any TV series of maybe aliens or maybe some other worldly forces basically threatening humanity with invasion or with other disaster, or doing basically anything else, like doing nothing but making it a great threat, like we are coming, we'll be here soon.
The day the Earth stood still.
Yeah. Right, Day the Earth stood still. Or like one of my favorites I mentioned last night was The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street.
Oh yeah.
They're showing how people react. Here, there wasn't even an obvious threat. There was just an implied threat, and people started cutting each other down. And I guess if you really want to sum up how people really behave in a sad way, that we have the concept that I don't have to run faster than the bear. I just have to run faster than you. Like,
right.
Wow, that's cynical as fuck.
Well, and also, I mean, we have
true most times. That's a joke. That's funny.
Right? Yeah, funny.
Well, and we have
we need the scare quotes.
We have, you know, and Dana, you mentioned like it depends on whether or not the threat is internal or external. But I mean, we have something like that with the threat of nuclear annihilation. I mean, yeah, that threat comes from ourselves, not from something out in the universe. But still, I mean, there is the very real possibility. I mean, there are more than enough nuclear weapons on the planet to kill everybody, and you know, the reason that hasn't happened isn't because we have all come together as one people and decided that we can't allow this to happen. I mean, the history there is full of some really, really upsettingly close calls where, you know, like a mistake or a miscommunication could have triggered some kind of nuclear exchange, and we're lucky that it just didn't happen. That there was someone in the right place at the right time who caught it and was like, "Whoa, shit!"
I really want.
Yeah, that one Russian subcommander. Yes.
Yeah.
He saved the world.
He saved the world.
No.
Yeah.
Just by saying no.
I'm actually gonna make a video about nuclear close calls for my YouTube channel. So.
Oh, cool. That's a great subject. Yeah.
Yeah.
See how close we've come to being destroyed so many times.
Yeah. Let's start with October of 1962.
Okay, so I just want to say, I don't think we should be so quick to condemn humanity as a whole, because you really have to look at the cultures. There are some cultures like, say, Finland or Japan, where they pride themselves off of helping others and strengthening, you know, the community. They don't just think about themselves. But in places like America, we don't believe in things like mutual aid. You know, it's a dog-eat-dog world. Everybody is encouraged to only care about themselves and screw everybody else.
Okay, I gotta get in here and talk. Sorry, I really have to. It's important before you left the subject, because it's kind of important for me about nuclear wars and about mutual aid and other stuff. Because like about America, it's a weird thing about how people get used to things and then just don't want to forgive them. Because to me, the idea that random people walking on the street could actually have guns is an outlandish, weird, dystopian idea. I don't want to live in a country like that. And for me, it's just like, I mean, if anybody on the street out there, like, basically appeared with the gun, it would be like 5 minutes until the police arrived and basically arrested this guy and tied him up and probably put him in jail on false charges because he's dangerous. Right. I mean, that's what they do now. Also probably would beat the shit out of him because they don't like him and he's like making a show or something. Like they don't like it. And another thing about nuclear weapons, the reason it hasn't happened yet is probably because most, at least half reasonable people understand that nobody is winning that one. Like there will be no winners, and that's the policy of mutual assured destruction. But then we can't forget that there are probably many people on this planet right now who, when being put in charge of a nuclear superpower, would probably nuke the other side at a whim. Like, imagine how many people on the planet there are right now.
Many live here in the United States.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't have to go full like Islamist terrorists to find those people. And I mean, for sure, it's easy to go see like religious cults that think if we die, we go to paradise. That's the easiest way to nuke the whole planet, but probably not the most probable one if you think about it.
This is why every night for 4 years that Trump was president, I was afraid that, you know, that the nuclear football was in his hands, that he might decide to blow some other country up just because he had a bad day.
And
I just have to quote one thing here. It's important. It's basically the quote by a guy you all have probably seen and all have probably know, one Vladimir freaking Putin. And the quote is not well known because it's an unpleasant quote, and it's probably from that time of the 2010s when the Crimea was annexed, like around that time. And the quote basically goes like this. It's about the nuclear war, and the quote goes like this. And it's a rough translation, but if the nuclear war happens, we Russians go to paradise as martyrs, and they die like dogs. Imagine your president saying that.
Yeah. It's not
so. But as I was trying to say before, I don't think we should be so quick to condemn all of humanity, because I understand that, especially if we're living here in America, it's easy to look at how people are acting here and think that it's just everybody. Humanity's bad. No. It's because our culture explicitly like pits people against each other and acts like you're an idiot if you care about people you don't know, or people outside your immediate like family.
Yeah, not even really our culture, right? There's huge variation within the United States, right?
We're not a monoculture by any means.
Yeah.
Dana, you had your hand up.
But even within that, like it all comes down to who counts as us and who counts as the other. And that's what, that's what my point was when I was talking about an internal versus an external threat. Nick, you made the point of, our culture versus other cultures, and that still ascribes to the same point. Like within America, it's not just about, it's very individualistic, but that has more to do with you choosing your own tribe, like who your people are, where it's not necessarily your nation. Whereas other cultures that celebrate, sort of subsuming the individual and putting the goals and the needs of the collective, it's still our collective before our community, before your community. And so that's why I'm saying like a threat that's aliens or, alien robots or something else could conceivably and reasonably cause humanity as a whole to say, we are humans first, and we're Americans or women or, our ethnicity or our faith or something else that comes second to whatever it is that is at threat that would unite us. We saw something along those lines, even with Americans' individualistic values. We saw that with some positive and very many negative results after 9/11. Americans became very nationalistic, and if you didn't support other Americans, that was not a good thing.
You're either with us or against us, as Bush said in the speech.
Very, very much so. And so that was something that we saw that dynamic change when we had something that we perceived as an external threat. And if you look back in the history of some of the other American wars with foreign powers, you see similar, a similar sort of nationalism as well there. And I think that same sort of thing could happen with a threat that is external to humanity as a whole, not like climate change, which is an internal threat. I mean, yes, the threat is external, but it's caused by us. So in that sense, it's not external.
Well, I just want to say to Dana's point, this is the reason why I kind of feel that Bin Laden won, because basically I think maybe not forever, maybe not irreparably, but for a long time, has changed the American culture in a way that was so highly negative that we basically we were already diverging to a degree, but then that was the punch that kind of really accelerated the divergence.
That's why I always say, 9/11 probably divided our country like more than anything, because we didn't find the weapons of mass destruction, and then we had all these why were we there? Then we had Obama as the first black president, which is not relevant to that, but it led up to that because Bush didn't do such a good job, I guess. And then there was this cultural backlash and all that, and it then led to Trump, and Trump's chaotic presidency led to the Capitol insurrection, which is ironic because this time it was American white people who attacked a building that we all thought that the Islamic fundamentalists. So it's like,
well, and it's really more for them in the first place.
Right, exactly.
But what I was trying to say was there are some parts of the world that I can see coming together against a threat like aliens more easily than I can see us in our country coming together.
I think you're right.
We're so divided. I think the thing I've noticed is that it's with right wingers, especially in basically any country. Right wingers are only able to empathize with a situation that directly affects them.
Exactly.
Their circle of us is just themselves, a few of their family members, maybe a neighbor, and that's it. Everyone else can fuck right off. Whereas I think of the whole of humanity as us. I look at people in other nations suffering, and I empathize with them as much as if they were, someone over here, because I have no reason not to. And when I see someone tweet something like, for every soldier that was killed, we should bomb an entire Afghani village, I'm like, what? Why? That doesn't make sense. Are they saying that one of our lives is worth 100 of their lives.
They are saying
how does that work? Because I just been like, we're both humans. So
it's like also white supremacy. They don't believe in Christianity either. So it's like God made us first, and you know, it's that racist
Joe M, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I wanted to elaborate a little bit on what Volvacat was saying about guns on the street and everything, and how that kind of makes, you know, has elements of dystopia on it. And there's another bit that's also scary, that a lot of the people that actually do that are also I guess it prevents as much turmoil, because it's not the people that do that, you know, if it was a different group, that the people that did that are also not the people that were getting yelled at. It's like, yeah, you and everyone like you should be removed from here, or you, and, you know, I would like to see everyone like you dead, or you're not a real person because you don't believe in the same God as me. Yeah. And this is, you know, the sort of people that carry guns are the sort of people that will openly say that to people's faces at times, and it's just really scary.
About the guns, I just want to share just a...
Okay. Go ahead. Go ahead. Well, I just want to just say, just to make this really quick, is that a lot of the, like, Volvacat, like, you have to understand that a lot of the laws we pass in this country have an element of racism to them. You know, like the whole thing about guns in America is, you know, if you're a Caucasian person, you know, yes, because that's what we've predicated gun ownership on is, you know, you're a white person, a white male, you know, you have kids, you know, you have a wife, and, you know, there are, you know, whether it's Native Americans, which they called red people, or whether it's people who are like me are going to like come and rape your daughters and whatnot. So a lot of that factors into like the gun stuff. That's why, you know, I don't, it's like I have people who are saying, well, why don't you trust the police? It's like, well, because the police let a bunch of rioters storm the Capitol, but yet a black guy got his you know, neck caved in for having what's supposed to be a $20 bill. It's like, and you say, why don't trust gun owners and the police? It's like, well, that's the reason, because we know if it was on the other foot, you know, it would turn out, it would be worse. Like, and one more thing too, it's like we have my governor here in Florida, which I'm not going to say his name.
Jeez.
basically let a bunch
Governor
of people
Voldemort
who were protesting, you know, the communism in Cuba, block a major intersection in Miami. But then when a BLM protest happened in Tallahassee on a 2-lane road, they sent the entire police to, like, I guess quell it. And I'm like, yeah, well, I don't trust you, and I don't trust the police because I don't think you guys are there to protect people.
Right.
I mean,
probably
the way I see it.
Yeah.
So
from the outside. Sorry.
No, go ahead. Let Volvacat respond, because Isaiah was talking there.
Sorry, I was trying to be more straightforward today and say more, because otherwise it doesn't happen every time. But basically, the way I see it from the outside, and I've been thinking a lot about it. I've been thinking a lot about how the United States are basically different from any other place, and they are. I mean, I'm looking at all the other countries I've been to and I've seen, and the United States are kind of different. And the idea is that the big pro thing going for you have is that you have an incredibly stable system. Like the two-party balancing each other out system you have is no, I mean, by the historical context, it hasn't changed in what, 200 years, 300? Do you know any other country which didn't change a political system in that long? I mean, in the past, probably there were, but right now, like until today, probably not. That's a good thing, but what comes bad with it is that you still have legal norms from the 1800s. And, that's and you have you use precedents in your like the precedents in your legal system. Like that's not how it works in many countries. Not how it works here. Here, every single case is viewed on an individual basis. If it's a fair trial, we have fair trials sometimes. When they are, it's like on an individual basis. The thing about you is still the two-party system you have, and let me tell you from a person who lives in a country which just can't seem to change its power and politics for like almost 25 years now. The thing is, you still have it better, whatever. whatever, your liberals and your conservatives, they both both parties suck, but at least you have two. At least at least it's
I still want things to be better.
Because I'm telling you, if your Democratic Party basically obliterates the Republican Party, then it won't be the next 10 years until they become Republicans.
Joe McCarthy recognized that 70 years ago.
So now,
Joe, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to kind of, and actually want to add on to what Isaiah said. So the thing that I find like fascinating in a very frightening way was that during Trump's era, that he started attacking a lot of artifices of it's weird. It was actually artifices of American power, things that we set up. So he attacked the government, he attacked the judiciary, he attacked our alliances, he attacked the United Nations. These are things that the United States helped establish, one, for at least in part for the world stability, but also to kind of help entrench our own power around the world. And he went after all these things, and here these rah flag waving morons were basically attacking the things that helped create and maintain American power that they're in love with.
Yeah.
So when you start tearing apart alliances, you start tearing apart our financial arrangements, you start tearing apart the United Nations, you start tearing apart attacking the seat of government and the way our government functions. You go and you attack the law enforcement when it's convenient. You attack the judiciary when it's convenient.
You attack NATO.
Yeah, and that's why for it was very easy, even though I don't have direct evidence of it, but I find it very easy to believe the idea that of Trump being under sway of some foreign power, because he literally, if you were going to actually do like the Manchurian Candidate, like the movie, he would fit the bill perfectly. Come in and fuck up everything that made America function.
There's only one problem.
I feel like that might almost be giving him too much credit. I feel like he just seriously.
No, I agree with you.
He just wanted power and more power. He wanted everything he said.
But remember, none of the policy came from him, because he doesn't have any. He doesn't have policy.
Right.
All the things he signed and all the things he did were handed to him by the people around him. So the reason why the Republican, and this is why I said a long time ago, that Republicans would ride his coattails for as long as they found him useful. At the instant any of them found him to be a liability, that would be the point at which they would cast him off. Now, individual Republicans have done that when they found that they felt that he was being more detrimental than accomplishing things. But as a group, they still think that they can ride his coattail to build and maintain their own power.
Paul's got his hand up, and I don't think he said anything yet, so I'm curious what he has to say about, either this or something related.
Yeah.
Well, first...
go ahead, Paul.
Hi, I've been to one of these before, so...
Good to have you here.
Paul.
This is how it's always like. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, and I'll say, Dan and Steve, just really quick, I so enjoy watching and listening to your videos.
Thank you
so much for it. I was going to say that I think that some of the stuff with Trump, it's just, I'm a historian. And so it's just like those kind of lineages of unilateral US power sort of based on white nationalism have like really long histories. So, one of the, like an example to get this is I'll have my students read a speech after the US conquered the Philippines in 1898. The first half of the speech, it's by a senator from South Carolina, like fucking Noam Chomsky could have written this speech. It's how, like, what right do we have to conquer other people? Like, this is the interests of capitalists and everything, all that. And then there's a pivot, and it's like, but the real problem, US colonizing the Philippines, is all those damn dirty brown people, right?
Wow.
And Ben Tillman, who is known as Pitchfork Ben Tillman, who's one of the main architects of Jim Crow. And I see Trump very much in that lineage, right? It's not that they need the Russians or anything to be telling him anything, that there's this version of US white nationalism that like is skeptical of certain kinds of US empire because it's like about as simple as like, ew, we have to deal with like other people, right?
Yeah.
We already have enough of those people in the US. So I think, yeah, Trump's part of a long lineage. And I don't think everything was just being given to him, because he's like, he is weirdly consistent politically on a few key issues. If you go and watch like his fucking interviews on Oprah or shit in the 80s, he's like, the Japanese are taking all of our jobs and all of our industry, and they're sapping our white male manhood. Essentially. And so
bodily fluids.
Yeah. Which I mean, these are all, yeah, our precious bodily. Yeah.
He sounds like Paris Hilton with that voice, just to say.
Yeah. Yeah. But you know, which is stuff that like Star Trek also definitely deals with, right? At certain points of like these ideas of like xenophobia within the Federation.
Oh, yeah.
Wait. Star Trek isn't political. Come on.
Yeah, what? It's just a pew-pew space show. It's just a pew-pew space show. Come on.
Oh, that's why I really laugh when people, I see people going this thing, oh, well, how Star Trek's getting bad because it got woke. I'm like, were you not paying attention to the last 50 years, 54 years, 55
I mean,
years?
The funniest part...
Paul didn't finish his point, though.
Yeah.
Did you finish your point?
Don't you talk over me.
Starting to ramble.
Oh, sorry. Now Steve, you go on.
I just wanted to point out, because when Joe Serious Mind just mentioned about, you know, people complain about how quote unquote woke Star Trek is all of a sudden, and it's like, I mean, in terms of its overt political messages in the episodes, it's probably less woke now than it's ever been. I mean, it's woke because the cast is even more racially diverse, and it's more inclusive, and there's like, now there are trans characters, and now there are women in more prominent roles. And, you know, so, I mean, it's more quote unquote woke in that way, in terms of the casting and the presentation.
Okay.
In terms of the stories, it's, I mean, and there is, I mean, it is still political. There are still political themes that the stories are about, but it's not nearly as heavy handed as it used to be. So, I mean, it's like you know,
but that's just it, Steve. Something I was talking about last night. Something I've come to realize about right-wing thinking is that it's all about symbology. It's almost never about policy. It's the symbolism of things. So of course, seeing more brown people and seeing more women in prominent roles, that to them, that in and of itself is the threat to their identity.
Oh yeah.
I actually wanted to comment on that.
Let's be honest.
Yeah.
No, I wanted to really comment on that one.
Go ahead.
About wokeness and all the other stuff and all the other people talking about that.
Go for
because I see a lot of people here around me talking about how many TV series and shows and Star Trek and all the other stuff became more woke. I mean, they don't use the word woke. We have different things for that that translate differently. But basically, the tendency that I see is that nobody reacts too much for like black people, because black people were in American movies for the last 30 plus years, and everybody's used to that. If you see an American movie, it's okay to see a black guy there because it's America, it's far away, people look different there. You know, we don't have black guys here. So it's like a point of this movie being foreign, especially when it was like the Soviet Union, and the foreign movies were really hard to get. And but basically about LGBT stuff, that's what everybody comments on. And it seems not about policy and not about fairness and not even about wokeness. It seems more about this thing that people just don't see those around. It's more that nobody here is openly gay. Nobody. And it's a cultural shock. It's something people are not used to. Same thing happened to me when I started watching some trans YouTubers on YouTube. At first, my brain was a bit off. My brain was a bit off at looking at a person who doesn't look like I am used to seeing people around me. But that came away. That wasn't sticking with me for a long time. I knew I was a bit maybe transphobic in the beginning, not in a sense of that I was thinking it's bad, in a sense that my brain wasn't used to it. And the same thing actually happens with Star Trek. And that's the thing that's bad about the people that say it's more woke or whatever. Whenever the Star Trek is just overtly political and tells us about how communism is basically good, and it did. and it still does, but it always did, about not having money. But people were like, well, of course, it's the future, and we all would like to live in this idealistic future without money, but that's never happening. That's the thing about conservatives. They think it's never happening, and it's impossible.
Even Rick Berman thinks that's, but go ahead. I'm sorry.
But as soon as we start actually seeing like LGBT people and black people, you're absolutely right. Those people feel threatened because
So I'm sorry, but there's some that I've been meaning to share for like 15 minutes now.
Go for it.
Go for it.
No, do your thing and then we'll wrap up because we're at the end of the hour.
So I have kind of a story to share, some that happened on here recently, and it's kind of like shaking up my view of things. Okay, so like police brutality, like over the years, it has made me sick. But even then, now and then, I look at how many people have guns in this country, and there is that part of me that thinks, well, I can't completely blame the cops for being a little jumpy, because feasibly they could pull somebody over, and yeah, that person might just boom, boom, boom. But then I look at what happened here in like 20 minutes from where I live right now. There was a Walmart, and there was this fat white guy, like in his 20s, who held a gun to his own head for 9 hours straight, from 4 p.m. to 1 a.m. And everybody in the Walmart wasn't allowed to leave, and there were cops everywhere outside. And so like everybody inside was breathing each other's COVID. And I look at how long this standoff lasted, and I'm thinking, why didn't they show to me a rice that much patience? You know, all these guys they've gunned down, all these black guys they've killed. Why didn't they have at least that much restraint with them? Why was this guy somehow less scary?
Well, and I'll tell you, something I said before, basically the system is, whether people like to hear it or not, there is a certain core of, particularly in law enforcement, built around white supremacy. And that, so basically browns can, they've done studies on this, that basically when white people see black people, we're inherently scary to them because I guess we represent the unknown. And so people tend to judge whatever we do differently. So that's why you can have people storm the Capitol and then have like conservatives say, well, of course you're going to storm the Capitol, but then they're okay with Eric Garner being choked out because he was selling loose cigarettes and not paying the taxes on it. And that, well, he was breaking the law, but they what's the woman that got shot? They're like,
yeah, now these Blue Lives Matter types are asking for that guy to be executed because he shot a white woman.
He shot somebody who was breaking the law violently, but the guy who, like, you know, even Michael Brown, okay, he stole some cigars, and that is worthy of the death penalty apparently if you're brown enough. And hell, his name was even Brown.
His name was Brown, Joe. His name was Brown.
Just an honest question about America. How often does it actually happen that a police officer pulls somebody over, no matter black or white or whatever, and basically the guy that's being pulled over just basically starts shooting back?
Almost never. And again, I've looked into statistics. In any given year, between 50 to 60 officers die at the hands of a perpetrator.
And this is why I'm against This is why I'm against everybody having guns. You know, we are swimming in them. There are more guns here than there are people.
But on the other hand, the police kill between 4,000 and 5,000 people a year.
Right.
Well, and COVID has killed more cops than shootings this year. But then, like in Denver, not far where I'm from, like 57% of the police are not.
Cops probably die more often than just regular car crashes.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's the thing. The number of police that die in a given year to gunfire, to basically perpetrators killing them, is roughly equal to how many die to non-combat things, having heart attacks on the job, car crashes, drowning. You know.
And there are a bunch of jobs that are more lethal than being a police.
My point was just that I hate that there's so many. My point was just that I hate that everyone actually has guns here because it gives them an excuse.
Right. Right. But again, as you pointed out though, it's how they react to people with guns is different. Like how many times people they got shot because they may have had a gun versus all the white terrorists who got taken, who actually killed people, like the church shooting down south. We got the theater shooting in Colorado, where any number of people were killed by the perpetrator, and yet they were taken into custody.
They're they were also like the cops also took in the shooter to Burger King on the way to the
yeah,
yeah, that's right. I remember that.
Then like those never mind. Sorry, I'm so done with white people. We make me sick.
Yes, I agree. So let's end whiteness, which is end whiteness.
Isaiah, you were going to say something, and then we'll wrap up.
I was gonna like end it on a more positive note and say when I went to MegaCon, do you want to see what I bought?
Yeah, hell yeah.
To talk, Isaiah.
Oh, you can't hear me?
No, you just won't appear.
You gotta talk for us to see.
It basically for the audience as well as home. You gotta hold it up to the camera and say what you have. I got.
I bought this the TNG, like I guess signature picture.
Yes.
Even though I'm not gonna probably get this signed, but I just thought this was cool. It was like $25.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. I love it. That's one of my favorite cast photos of them. It's such a cool picture.
I love
it's like they went to J.C. Penney and got a portrait.
Exactly. It looks like they went to J.C. Penney and got a family photo.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. I know that background, so yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the soft, like the blue heather background. And...
Right.
Well, Steve, that's funny because it's funny in and of itself, but also that you know what that's oldians that know what J.C. Penney's is.
That's where we got our family pictures taken. We didn't go to a portrait studio. We went to Penny's.
I heard J.C. Penney's department store. That's all.
Yeah, technically still exists.
I heard Maria Sirtis punched the fan because like he made a rude comment to her.
Oh, wow.
So that was
good for her.
She can do that. Yes.
You don't fuck with her. If you ever watch her at panels and stuff at cons, like she does not give a shit.
No, she doesn't.
I mean,
she's Marie assertive.
Yes, exactly. She does not give a shit.
Whenever you started talking about J.C. Penney, I thought about why would anybody take a photo in a bank? Then I realized that was
yeah, that's hilarious.
That's a perfect moment to end the stream on.
Exactly. Y'all take pictures of yourselves in banks. That's weird. Anyway, yeah.
I remember Vovacat when I told him like I will hook him up. He didn't know what that meant, so I was like,
the language barrier. It's a beautiful thing. So thanks everybody for joining me as always. Thanks everybody for watching. Patreon.com/Steve Shives to become a patron, or click the join button to become a channel member. This is one of the things that we do every month with patrons and members. Hang out for an hour or so in a video call, and everybody can watch, but only patrons and members get the chance to participate and talk over each other and try to get a word in edgewise for an hour. So anyway, we'll do this again
charity
next.
Links.
So yes, thank you, Geek. Don't forget the charity links, charitylinks.page. Help out some friends of ours who need a helping hand.
And I graduate from film school this month.
Oh, hell yes. Congratulations. That's awesome. That is a positive note to end on. All right.
Have you next month? You will be already graduated, right?
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
congratulations.
There.
Congratulations. All right. So that's what a great note to end on. So thanks for joining me, everybody. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you next month.